We have an expert here, Julian Sanchez, research fellow at the CATO Institute, joining me on set. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
This internet security flaw that Mark New is talking about, essentially it doesn't allow the people to secure their information when you're logging on and put, say, credit card information, for example. They could steal that without leaving a footprint. So you wouldn't even know if someone stole your password, so to speak.
The really dangerous thing about this bug is that it's in a function called Heartbleed that isn't normally logged. It's a sort of little background function that you don't usually need to keep records of, so it doesn't leave traces. So if a site was exploited using this bug, it wouldn't necessarily leave a mark, which means they wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you, yes, your password might have been stolen, and even more important, they wouldn't be able to know whether their master encryption keys, the keys that they're using to secure all of those communications, have been stolen.
I gotta be a little skeptical here. I would never question IT experts on this, but why has it taken this long to even discover this? Because it's not, the internet wasn't born yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it is, when you look at it, actually a very tiny and subtle mistake that led to this, this bug. It's basically a place where in the code, it's a system that checks whether the connection is still active and says, okay, here's just some garbage data, send it back if you're still there. And the problem is the code didn't check to see whether you're asking for the same amount of data back you've sent. And if you ask for more data back than you sent, it just pulls it from memory, whatever's there, including maybe other people's passwords or even the site's encryption keys. One of the problems here is that OpenSSL, this is a very popular software that is subject to this vulnerability, is basically a kind of volunteer project with a very small budget and a very small number of volunteers who are basically reviewing all that code. And so a very tiny mistake that slips in, if a few people who are reviewing it don't look at it, because it's open source code,
why can't they fix it? Why can't they fix it?
Well, they can fix it.
Why can't they fix it like right away and just fix it?
Well, so one problem is just getting everything rolled out quickly so that you're able to secure the connections. But that part isn't the hard part, right? It didn't take very long to patch the code so that Yahoo and Google and all those companies that are relying on it were able to reboot their servers with the new code. The bigger problem is, because it doesn't leave traces, they can't be sure that their old keys are any good. The keys that they're using to secure the site and to verify that you're really connecting to Google and not someone else posing as Google. And so all these sites, maybe 500,000 sites, if they can't be sure they haven't had those keys stolen, need to revoke the keys, basically send out a message to the world saying, don't trust the old keys, they might have been stolen.
All right, so for our global audience, I think everyone's thinking the same thing. If they steal my password or steal Ron's password or anybody's password in this building, so what? What are they going to do with a password? What's the worst thing that can happen to somebody?
Well, you can have your identity stolen. There are certainly tons of people around the world. A Pew survey just came out showing
So with a password, they can steal someone's identity?
If it's a password that gives them access to something like your email account.
Something else.
So if it's a password that lets them into your email account, well, they can very often use that to gather all kinds of sensitive information that they can then use to, run up steal your credit card numbers, run up phony bills of various kinds.
So is your advice for everybody that's watching and here to change their passwords?
Certainly. I mean, you want to make sure that the site you're changing it on has upgraded their system so they're not vulnerable. The company McAfee has basically set up on their website a tester you can use to check whether a website is vulnerable. Once you're sure it's not vulnerable, yeah, it's a good time to change your password. And if you're one of those people who uses the same password everywhere, which makes you much more susceptible to being attacked, it might be a good time to change to a password manager so you can use make sure you're using different passwords on different sites. That way, if one is compromised, you're not in trouble everywhere else.
To the economy, to the corporate world, do they need to worry about something like this, or is this going to be taken care of ultimately? It's going to take time, I understand that, but is it going to be fixed in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks?
I think it's going to slow down the internet a bit while all those key revocations go out. Our browsers aren't really built to handle the idea that you'd have thousands or hundreds of thousands of sites all at the same time trying to cancel their old keys and issue new ones. But it really depends how long anyone else knew about this bug. It might be that the people who discovered it were basically the only people who knew about it, or not many people knew about it. And if that's the case, it'll be a bit of a drag and then no big deal. If it turns out other people had found it first and maybe have been stealing information for a while and waiting to use it until the loophole was closed.
That's the big danger.
That then
right.
we'll discover over time how compromised our information really has been.
I hope you're wrong. Julian Sanchez, Sanchez from the CATO Institute, thank you very much. Great to have you on to try to explain this internet breach.